Today we are going to be painting a gargantuan red dragon. Welcome to the first video on Adamant Anvil. I'm going to be taking you step by step on the process of how I ended up painting this dragon, and I'm going to show you where I have kind of made a mistake in my painting process. Now I know in this box, if you're familiar with this model, it says pre-primed and ready to paint, but I decided to take my own route and give it a prime already because I have had some experience with these kind of models, and the primer is kind of it works, but I kind of wanted to give it my own coat of primer, just so I know I have a good quality of prime on this model. And that is where we will begin, so let's get to it. Now when priming a model, you want to make sure you are putting a light coat on there. The model has a lot of details on it, so you want to make sure you're not putting too much primer on the model, otherwise those details might get obscured. Also, primer is a pain to wash off, so wearing some gloves might help in case any light breeze kicks up and gets primer all over yourself. While I'm waiting for the model to dry, I took a look at some source material to get some inspiration on how I want to paint this model. Dungeons & Dragons has the most iconic red dragon, and I think that's how I want to paint my model. However, this is a Pathfinder model and it differs a little bit, so I'm going to take some inspiration from both the 5th edition and 4th edition red dragon to paint my model. Now that I have a game plan, time for a base coat. Don't know why I started with a small brush, that was a big mistake. There we go, that's a lot better. For the base coat of this dragon, I used Vallejo's Flat Red. This was probably the longest part of the entire painting process, was getting the base coat on, trying to get underneath every little nook and cranny, getting between each spine that is on this dragon. It was a lot of work. As the model is starting to get its base coat on it, this is where I start to ruin this model. It took me a lot of coats from the Vallejo Red, I think about like 4 or 5, and it started to obscure some details. So if any of you that is watching that has painted with Vallejo, maybe you can leave a comment and give me some tips on how to use Vallejo properly. This was the first time of me using Vallejo, so I thought I'd give it a chance, and it seemed to not get it to work to the best of its ability from what I've seen. To paint the dragon's chest, I use Citadel's Xandri Dust, as it gives a nice tannish brown color that sort of matches Dungeons & Dragons' red dragon. This color did go on a little thin, but luckily it only required 2 coats. can't forget the bottom of its feet. The next color I used was Citadel's Morghast Bone. I used this on the dragon's claws and teeth. Next, I gave the dragon a good bathe in Citadel's Nuln Oil. Now, I know a lot of you painters out there might either be loving this or hating it. And the reason why I covered the entire dragon in the Nuln Oil was not only to bring down the brightness of the red on the dragon, but also any black spots could sort of give it a nice ashy look, what I'm going for here. Now that the Nuln Oil is dried, we're now going to use Citadel's Troll Slayer Orange to color in the dragon's eyes. Next, we're going to use Citadel's Averland Sunset to put a nice small little yellow dot in the eye of the dragon. Well, this finishes up the dragon, so now it's time to work on the base of the dragon. Now we're going to take Citadel's Corn Red and Evil Sun Scarlet to start pinning in our base. I'm going to go from darkest to brightest colors of trying to make a base that sort of has the colors of lava. And we're also going to use our previous orange and yellow on top of the base too. Some of these colors going a little thin, so if you're following along at home, make sure you give it a few layers to sort of hide away those brush strokes. If any of you have done this at home, you could probably see where I'm going. Next, I did 50-50 of some white glue and water to put a nice thin protective layer on top of the base. I don't know why Citadel did this, putting white on white. But the next thing I put on my base is a coat of Ard Coat. This will smooth out the base for our next color to pull away smoothly. And lastly, I use Citadel's Mordant Earth to create the lava effect on the base. You need to slap this all over top of whatever you're trying to give a lava effect to, and then over time it'll pull away, giving it a nice molten, cracky looking lava. And it should look something like this. And here it is. Despite the mistakes I made with the base coat, I think the model still turned out pretty well. I'm very happy with it, and I know my players will be too. Well, that's about it for this model. Despite the errors in the base coating, um, I think the model turned out pretty well. Um, if you use Vallejo paints, maybe you can give me some tips in the comment section below, and maybe point out what I did wrong. Maybe I just was using the paint too thin, but no, despite the errors and a little bit of detail being covered up, I think the model turned out pretty well, and I think my players are going to enjoy it being on the tabletop. If you enjoyed watching this video, please consider giving it a like and subscribing, and I hope you are stick around for the next one.